Going to be taking a look at a ladder game I just played last night, where I play against a Terran opponent that does an aggressive mech opening, and I defend it. So I'm speeding through the first part of the game simply because it's my normal opener where I go hatch, gas, pool. There's a hatchery, there's the gas, there's the spawning pool. I have been reconsidering my position on my spawning pool a little bit. Putting it here sort of between where my main and natural are makes it so that drops have a harder time picking it off. Everything's looking normal so far. I'm not doing anything outside the norm. I was a tiny bit off on my timing there, so my gas doesn't quite line up perfectly for my Zergling speed, but I do get it started here momentarily. Made the 2 queens as soon as the pool is done. There we go, got the Zergling speed started. My overlord gets here and sees that my opponent doesn't have an expansion, so I need to see what's going on. Because if my opponent doesn't have an expansion up, that means they might be doing something aggressive. I want to find out what that is. Okay, 2 depots, nothing unusual there. What's this building? It's a factory at the front, not a barracks. Okay, that could mean a mech opening. It could mean they're trying to drop a mine in the base. Go make sure I hit my injects, and then I go to check up on my scouting information again. Okay, there's Hellions. Okay, so they're going to be attacking with Hellions. They're making additional factory here. Say, okay, well, if they're not making Marines, I'm going to get all the free information in their main base that I can right now. I'm going to keep making drones. I make a Baneling nest now because I need to turn some of my Zerglings into Banelings against Hellion or Hellbat aggression. Zerglings get roasted all day, but Banelings are very good against them. I don't want to make Roaches, which are another good defensive unit, because they lose value later in the game. They're not good once the late game gets going, except in very specific situations. And also if my opponent makes Cyclones, since Cyclones deal bonus damage to armored units, which the Roach is, they will get to deal bonus damage to my Roaches and eliminate them super fast. My Zerglings and Mainlings and some extra Queens should be enough for defense. I've been saying that I need to be making more Queens anyway in most of my games. The Scout has reminded me, oh hey, I need to make sure I make enough Queens. So I have some Overlord sort of surrounding where my opponent's potential exits from their base are. I saw this attack on the way in. I don't quite have my Banelings morphing in time, but I have enough Zerglings to hold off for now, along with the Queens at the front, to keep anything from running by. Okay, so I'm still just making more Queens, more Zerglings with the intention to make them into Banelings. I see, oh hey, they've added the Cyclones. Unit is the reason I did not make any Roaches, because they're just, Cyclones destroy them all day. So I'm trying to defend purely with Zerglings, Banelings, and Queens. I know if my opponent is doing this much aggression, they aren't likely to have a lot of workers at home and a big economy, so I'm okay still being on 2 bases. I'm starting to kind of have minerals, because I have really been making all my workers for my bases, but I should probably have started a macro hatchery already to produce more units out of, since it doesn't look feasible to get a 3rd base right now with the whole mech army standing right outside my natural. I could also potentially be doing a better job using the creep to connect my bases up. Okay, finally see that my opponent is starting a natural. So that means they plan to be done with the aggression, or mostly done with the aggression soon, I think. I'm still making more Queens. I got Overlord speed, so that they can go around the map more easily. Pulling as many Queens to the front as I can. Really, I should have one hitting the inject on that hatchery there too. So this is one I started last season with Mech Depot, where I'm creeping up my main base. It gives me better incoming information about drops. That seems unlikely since I've seen my opponent playing Mech, but it will also give me information about when Liberators are coming in, which is a thing that seems likely to see with the Mech army. So I finally start this macro hatchery. It could have probably been done by now, so I could actually spend all the money that I have, because I've been stuck on larva, partly from not hitting injects, but partly also because I have saturated 2 bases, but those by themselves do not produce enough larvae. I need more hatcheries to produce the number of larvae that I need to actually spend my resources, even if I was hitting my injects properly. I might not have 1,400, but I would have probably 800 still left over. So I think my opponent is mostly done with the aggression now. I try to go out here to check on what's going on. See, oh, well, they actually are still standing a lot of stuff at my front door. I'm getting +1 armor now. Armor is good against both the mech units they have there, the Hellion and the Cyclone. Because Cyclones have large number of attacks really fast, but they only do like 3 damage a shot or 5 damage a shot or something. So if you take away their 3 damage per shot. So if you get 1 armor, that makes it 2 damage a shot. If you get 2 armor, then they only deal 1 damage a shot. Unless you're armored, then they deal extra damage to that. Hellions here deal a little bit more damage. I know they're bonus versus light, but it's still, upgrades are good against them as well on the armor front. So my opponent still has a ton of units. I'm thinking, well, if they're hanging out on this side of the map for this long, they must have a third base behind this to get their own big economy tried to set up to try to come and attack me later. I got the layer during all of this. I've started a Hydralisk then. Oh hey, there's the Liberator that I thought might be coming, because I did actually see the starport with that initial Overlord, so I knew that was a potential follow-up. But Queens are good against those. The Hydralisks will be good against that. The Zerglings are even okay against it, because they can run past the Liberator and take not a lot of losses.
Your forces are under attack.
Liberators are best against high HP units and armored units.
Evolution,
so they're not especially good against Zerglings and Banelings. Okay, get out here and engage the mech army. This is another place where I kind of get out here. I could set up a surround by going up a different ramp than my opponent leaves from, but I don't really do that. I also managed to whiff the couple of transfuses on my queens out there, so I lost 2 of them that I might have been able to save. So my opponent's still here, trying to keep me from taking additional bases. Okay, well, if you're still there, I guess I just keep working on my tech and army here. Finally got a few Hydralisks out. That'll help me fight everything in their army right now. Still have several queens at the front here. Finally spent all those minerals I had earlier. Finally starting my attack upgrade for the ranged attack. But I'm trying to just make a large enough army I can actually bust out of my base. So I think this is the one that finally does it. I just have so much stuff I overwhelm what my opponent's doing. Okay, now I have some room. I can try to get up a third base. I said before I think that the other third base is actually better on this map, was my initial impression. In this game I take the one over there because I think it's less vulnerable to run-bys from Hellions than the one to the south of my natural would be. So I think I'm actually going to have an easier time defending it because of the particular strategy my opponent is doing. If my opponent was still doing a more standard bio play with drops, I think it still would be more correct to take the base along the side of the map. So I'm working on my Hydralisk upgrade there, my +1 attack for the Hydralisks and Queens, making drones for my new base. I'm just kind of over here to see if my opponent has a third yet. I go, well, this seems weird. It doesn't look like they have a third base. I would have thought, as long as they had me contained on my side of the map, which was about 7 minutes, that they could have set up a third, maybe even a fourth base in that time to really press their advantage. So one of the reasons you attack your opponent in Starcraft is that you are trying to force them to do a certain thing. In my opponent's case, it was for me to defend at home a lot. Now, while I'm defending at home a lot, that means I can't be out on the map attacking your newly acquired bases while you get them set up. So I would have thought that was what they were doing, but I get over here and I go, wait a minute, my opponent doesn't have a third base. I can just back up, because I think once my base kicks in, and I've got 3 bases to their 2, I'll be able to so outproduce them in units and upgrades that I'll have such a large advantage that it won't even matter what units I'm making, how I control them. It should snowball into such a large advantage that that wins the game. which is what I thought my opponent was doing with their attack, but it looks like they didn't actually follow it up with any bases behind it. So I just set my army at home going, well, I just want to make sure my opponent doesn't come attack me and disrupt my economy for a couple minutes here. And I set up things to do a transition to the later game. I make an infestation pit so that I can get the hive, because the end game here, I get another evolution chamber. The end game here is to make brood lords. So you make corruptors to get rid of their air army and brood lords to fire at the stuff on the ground. The second evolution chamber let me research 2 upgrades at a time instead of only the one I've been doing so far. I go, well, if I'm playing for the long game, I need a 4th base to actually have proper income to support these things. So I send the Starnet here to do that. Stand my army at my new base, because while bases are just done is one of the times they're most vulnerable, because it takes time for the income you have to pay for the base, so it takes some time to recoup that investment. Has to be up for about a minute or 2 before it really is paid for itself. But once it's paid for itself, then you have additional income for the production of additional units and army. I'm just sort of keeping out what my opponent's doing. I'm not super familiar with this map because I haven't played a ton of games yet this season. There's some destructible rocks I could probably have been knocking down here that would have made my life a little easier to move stuff around on the map. Keep that in mind for future games on this map. People seem to really like it from everything I've heard. There's a little bit of a defender's disadvantage weirdness around your natural and your potential 3rd bases, but that's actually kind of good because defender's advantage can be problematic sometimes against mech armies, so maybe if they have a disadvantage that'll be good for me at that spot. On their side of the map, I get over here and, okay, my opponent warped a battlecruiser across the map, so I think, do they have a hidden base somewhere? Because how are they making a battlecruiser off 2 bases? Typically you need 3 to 4 bases to be supporting production for battlecruisers if you want to make them in any real numbers. So I do a pretty good job of not letting the transfuses here so that my queens just keep fighting the battlecruiser. And some hydralisks pop too, and I rally them over here so they can clean this up. All while I'm still doing the attack at my opponent's. I cleaned up their 4th base. I make them lift off the 3rd and run away from this one. And I know they're basically out of minerals at their main base and their natural because of how long the game has been going on. I still see a couple blind spots on the minimap where I don't have overlords at bases that there really should be. Because if my opponent is hiding a base, I want to have that information so that I can make a correct response play. But I just saw my Greater Spire there got started, so I am trying to move on to the longer game, where I make Corruptors and then morph them into Broodlords, and then use whatever small ground army I have left over to fight the rest of the Terran army.
Our forces are under attack.
I move up here blindly. This is bad. I should send up just a couple units to see what's going on. Starting a whole bunch of my army through siege tank fire multiple times for no reason. I don't do very much damage with it. That was very bad. If you save up more army for later, then when you make your bigger engagement, you have more units there, you can just completely curb stomp your opponent instead of just eking out edges and eking out edges again. Since I already am pretty sure I have the economic advantage here, I really want to just pull up as big of an army as I can get before I engage. So these are things I'm realizing after the game that I'm trying to get into my head so that the next time I'm in a game live, I can think, oh, hang on, this is the position I'm currently in. Let's play it correctly to maximize what I think my current advantage is in the game. Or I did think my advantage in the game right now is, oh, well, I have a bigger economy than my opponent. So give it a couple cycles of production, I will be able to have a bigger army, probably a better upgraded army than my opponent. I did lose track of my upgrades a little bit in the mid game here, so they're not as far along as they could be. But I am getting the melee attack upgrade, which helps the Broodlords. I am getting the ground carapace upgrade. Helps my survivability against all their stuff that fires on the ground. Oh, my overlord spotted that my opponent's trying to take this base out here again, so I decided I want to try to go deny that if I can.
You're engaging the opponent.
I decided I have enough corruptors now that I can probably take any sort of air army that my Terran opponent might have, which I assume they do since they have a battle cruiser coming to my base, that they probably have other air army too. Before I engage, I go back and make sure I have hit my injects. Should really always do this as Zerg, because that way you can properly resupply your army or make drones while the fighting is going on. If you attack before you do it and then you get back there, well, now you've lost all the time you were fighting that hasn't had additional larvae pop off your base. So you want to do it before you engage when you're able to. Ideally that's every time. It's still a long way from every time for me. So the planetary and the siege tank made pretty short work of my ground force there, but I do have all these corruptors still, so I use their caustic spray ability to take down the planetary fortress here. It's a spell ability that they have, deals small amount of damage at first, and then after a certain number of seconds it goes up dramatically, the damage per second. So I'm still feeling good here. I feel like, okay, I've got the Terran where they don't have a lot of bases, I'm pretty sure. I've got better tabs on some of the stuff out in the corner where they might try to hide stuff. I see they have this one to the right of where I attacked the base now. So I had these Zerglings rallied pretty well to catch those Hellions, but I screwed that up by all armying. I almost ran the Zerglings away without actually cleaning up the last of the Hellions. I do fortunately realize I managed to grab them and the Queens to keep that Hellion runway from actually doing one thing. Come over here and clean up this base too that my opponent is trying to take that I've spotted thanks to my overlord position there. And then I go, well, I still need to see, I haven't seen their air army yet, which I assume they have, so where's it at? So my corruptors head up here to try to look for what's going on. Well, there's a siege tank. Don't see the air army yet. Well, let's make another broodlord or two, because you want like 6 to 8 of those to really be able to finish off the ground units your opponent's going to have. And I still have the corruptors right here to protect if there is any sort of air army that comes.
You're engaging the opponent.
Oh hey, there's finally their air army. They come over here trying to engage the broodlords. And they even pick off a couple. It's okay, I have plenty of those. But I do manage to get my corruptors to destroy my opponent's base that's there, and then engage this air army. At this point, I'm fairly certain my opponent doesn't have any more bases on the map, so I'm going to win from here. My opponent actually does end up deciding that's also the case. Says that Terran is underpowered. Maybe at the very top levels that's true. I feel like in this game, maybe the case was more that they didn't press their advantage when they were really up in my face in the early game. I was quite surprised to see they didn't have 3 or 4 bases up after that attack ended. For instance, if we look at the stats from the replay here, we can look at this one that's got army value, but the really telling one is the workers active here. So I make my first big swell of workers. I get up to around 40 workers. I have to defend some aggression. I'm still teching up making the buildings here, but I wasn't able to replace drones because I had to make army to defend their army. But you see, even after that, I'm ahead of my opponent in workers. They have another big spike here with workers when I think I've held off the aggression pretty well. And my opponent's still barely getting more workers. So here, by the end of the game, I'm in the mid-50s. My opponent has never gotten more than 40 workers the entire time this game has been going on. So this game is largely about economy. So if you look at it this way, the area under my worker line here, compared to where my opponent's worker line is, this is all income advantage that I have. And by having the advantage of the income, you end up being able to produce more units, get more upgrades, and just be able to eventually have such an overwhelming force that you can defeat your opponent. So like, you see it translates into the army graph here, it kind of goes back and forth. Not a lot there, not a lot there, but eventually, it's just I have this huge explosion where I had so many workers I could then make plenty of army units. That's all for this one. I'm going to go ahead and find another ladder game right now.